problem with speaking about this, it's not a problem really, but it can seem like a problem, is that it sounds as though I know what I'm talking about. And it may sound, and it may appear that I'm some kind of expert, that I have some special knowledge, some kind of insight, understanding. Even some might say wisdom, especially if you've come from a spiritual background, that everyday human beings, everyday folk, ordinary people don't have. Now, I can't dispel that myth, but if I could, I would. Because what is being spoken of is not knowable, not understandable, not gettable, not havable. No one has more or less of what we speak of. There is no more or less. This is regardless of what you think it is. It's inclusive of what you think it is, but, but it really doesn't matter. And it's the not mattering, whether it matters or not, that may feel like love. It might not. But it not mattering whether it matters or not, or what matters, may feel like love because it's unconditional. There's no one getting it right. There's no one getting it wrong. There's no one closer or further away. There's no one moving towards. There's no one staying. There's no one lost, and there's no one found. And this is regardless of whether there's still stories about all of that, about anything. Because I think I, like a lot of you, tried really hard to I don't know, dispel the myths, to get to the true story. This isn't the true story. This is the story that it's all stories. All of it. And we're storytellers. So the stories remain. Stories are still told. All beautifully empty stories. What there is without stories, that would just be another story. And I think the allure, the attraction is that, okay, I could get to the story to end all stories. The absolute story. And I think a lot of people who are attracted, I think I'd include myself in that, was attracted to non-duality. The attraction for me was that it sounds like this is the story to end all stories. Well, there's some bad news really on that. The stories don't end. There is no end to the story. There is no conclusion. This is not a conclusion. This doesn't conclude. And if in your story you've been on a long journey and you're waiting for a rest, of course, you can really only imagine the end of my story, the end of me. And I think, again, that's how I heard non-duality for a long time. I heard this message as it is the end. But if there's no one to end, there is no end. You had to have begun in order to end. So this isn't an ending. It isn't a conclusion. This isn't a final resting place. There's no place to rest and no one to rest. You could say that this is always at rest. Even in the running. But the story doesn't conclude. It's not like shutting the book and putting it down. And so the question just remains, if the question remains, the question probably does remain, that so what is this? And again, this is not an answer. So the answer is not an answer to a question. The answer is the absence of the question, the absence of the questioner. If this is unquestionably as it is, including all the stories of how it is and why it is, you could say that's the rest. And I know you probably still want to understand. But no understanding is required for this to be as it is. None at all. This is simply as it is, with or without understanding. And there is a wonderful piece in I don't know. I mean, for most selves, it's not a peace, because there is this insatiable desire to know. But I don't know is the peace and the rest. If there is no you separate from anything else, there is no anything that is you, and there is no anything that is not you, and there is no you. But with it, when there is no you, there is no not you. The whole illusion of being me is that I know what's not me. And in place of that is nothing. In place of that knowing the difference between me and not me, there isn't anything in its place. To even say there's not knowing is saying too much. Because again, not knowing sounds like something. And I have quite a few people say to me, well, it's okay for you because you know that you don't know. Or you know not knowing. Oh, what kind of genius do you take me for that I'd know not knowing? There's no knowing not knowing. And really not knowing, it isn't the right thing to say. Because emptiness is closer. It's really not knowing the difference between knowing and not knowing. Because of course the illusion of knowledge is that I know the difference. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. But if all the knowledge is empty, equally empty as not knowing, knowledge loses all its weight, all its power, all its attraction. And that can feel like quite a loss. The loss of needing to know. You know the excitement when you had an insight or a breakthrough. How exciting. I remember that. When you pieced it together, or suddenly the pieces seem to fit. Well, there are no pieces to fit together. This is not in pieces. So, yeah, if you've got anything to ask, just put your hand up. If you want to share anything, put your hand up. If you don't want to speak, then write anything in the chat and we'll have a look at it.
Evie has a hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Evie.
Hi. Thanks, Tim. I loved how you said that this is not in pieces. Somehow hit home.
Oh, thank you. I know. Yeah, I mean, that's why we could say we're speaking about non-duality, although there is no non-duality. It's just saying there's not pieces. Yeah.
Nothing to piece together.
And there's nothing to piece together yet. Without pieces, of course not. That's why quite often most speakers who speak about this in a kind of similar way to, it sounds like I do, will talk about wholeness and completeness. And I will say not many talk about oneness anymore, but that used to be, it seems like oneness is out of fashion these days. But the wholeness and completeness is the lack of pieces, which is you could say that's the normal dual reality, is that this is a universe full of things, and each thing is separate. And it just may be obvious that, yes, there can be an appearance of the separate things in just the same way, but that the edges of the things, the boundaries of all the things are arbitrary, and there really are no boundaries between things. Where one thing ends and another begins, we've made that up. And language very powerfully reinforces that. So we know where the chair ends and the table begins. And we know where England ends and Scotland begins, for example. I mean, that's a bit more abstract than a chair and a table, but it's not that you lose the ability to speak in things and in pieces, but the belief in it can completely die. I think that's one of the reasons I can say with some conviction that nothing is lost, because the ability to speak in typically dualistic language doesn't go anywhere. And to think that way too. And of course, most spirituality talks us thinking, I'm really looking at my picture and thinking it's so annoying that my words are not matching my mouth. Sorry. Really find it very disconcerting.
It's interesting what you're talking about, boundaries and the space between things, and how it always seems like the space between there's the table and the chair, and they're separate, but the space between is a thing as well. It's just, but usually that's overlooked, that the space is also a thing.
Yeah, you could say it that way, but of course the space between it isn't a thing either. Mm-hmm. It's just that there are no things. It's just the space between the things is seen as not a thing. It's space. Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah. So we have, but of course you can put the chair up against the table, so there is no space between. And still, I mean, it's pretty. There doesn't need to be space.
In chat, Alex says, awareness cannot be known, but it can be experienced prior to I.
Good luck with that. Really? Right. I shouldn't laugh, but I have no idea. When anyone speaks about awareness, I don't know what they're on about. I mean, to make awareness a thing, I just think, wow, making a chair a thing is one thing, but making awareness a thing, shit, that's a stretch. At least I can sit on a fucking chair. One of the reasons, I mean, it's difficult for me because I don't like being disrespectful. But the whole consciousness, awareness, I've never got any of it. It's never appealed. It never resonated. I haven't got any idea what anyone is ever speaking about when they speak of consciousness or awareness. I can sort of abstract some kind of, but for me, there's no more mental gymnastics than talking about consciousness or awareness as a thing.
Rakesh has his hand up.
So,
unless you want to go on. Yeah.
But there can't be anything prior to I, because there's no I to be prior to. Now there is nothing, because this whole before or deeper or there is nothing before or after. There is no prior to I. For a start, there has to be an I for there to be something prior to it. And then you have to, if you're imagining awareness, immediately that can only be something that's separate from awareness to be aware of awareness, surely. I mean, for me, it's just talk about a mental gymnastic game that self loves to play. But I emphasize I don't know that. Nearly everyone believes in awareness. And virtually everyone believes in consciousness. I mean, the most non-spiritual human beings I know, if they have a concrete sense of self, they will all say, I am aware. I am conscious. That's pretty universal.
Rakesh has got his hand up. Go ahead, Rakesh.
Thanks, Darren. Hi, Tim.
Hi. Nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you too. And Darren. Yeah, I was watching your Copenhagen meeting last night, and something that I wanted to talk about, you mentioned there, but kind of tied into a couple of things you mentioned today.
Okay.
One of them was, you mentioned like those insights, those breakthroughs. And I know in the Copenhagen meeting, you mentioned this phase of like feeling like there was progress. And then there was this kind of a long period of like the opposite, almost like kind of this, I can't remember how you described it, but like a despair almost. And then just now you were saying about like the me wanting somewhere to rest. I might be paraphrasing there.
Yeah.
But it kind of, yeah, just like what it feels like here is a mixture of the two. Like there's like these, it feels like progress, and then like a bird that has nowhere to land, like, oh, I'll land here, and then it's like, oh no, you can't stay there. Okay, I'll go on that thing, and it's, oh no, that's an electric wire. So it's and then it's like I don't know, in a way it just feels like a breaking down.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if you could speak a bit more about that period of despair and stuff. Or...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was a seeming, you could say there's the illusion of growth and then the illusion of decay, you could say, or the illusion of gaining and then the illusion of loss, because that's how self feels. So, and self usually feels great in gaining and feels at least some fear. And if the losses are great or they feel great, then despair. And of course, if it comes to the loss of myself, then an existential despair, which can feel really, really like dying. You know, that's what I think, that's why throughout, you know, this ego death that spirituality has talked about a lot, and most spiritual traditions have some kind of, in order to transcend or to be transcendental, then ego self, me self, must die. And yeah, I would have said at that time, I would have said that's what felt like was happening.
Yes.
But and I mean, I don't know this, but none of it happened. So there were no insights. There are no insights. And so there was no gain. And in the seeming despair of losing everything, because it was mine, especially myself, nothing was lost. But I'm not disputing that it can feel both ways. And as you say, at the moment, you have the sense of feeling both. You know, there's a sense of I am getting somewhere, and then I fall back. And you could say that is the very nature of self. The very nature of self is gain and loss. So I'm on a journey, and sometimes it feels like I'm getting somewhere, and sometimes it feels like I'm going backwards. And of course, if self feels like it's going backwards, if it's losing all its gains, then inevitably there will be a feeling of great fear, terror, and possibly despair. By despair, I really mean that I'm going to fall into nothing. I'll be nothing.
Yes, this the despair is becoming like familiar in a weird way. It's like almost like you know, that's what kind of started the journey in the first place.
Yeah,
was like, oh, there must be something else, because nothing else is kind of, everything's pointless, and so there must be something else. And then it's almost like it's like some carrot that you every time you grab it, and it's just like, oh wait, there's nothing there.
No.
Yeah.
No, because there is nothing there. So the most terribly wonderful news is there is nothing there. There is nothing to be had. And that's the terrible part. The wonderful is there's nothing to be lost. I mean, it's terribly wonderful.
Yeah, I wrote it down. There was something you said in that meeting. I wrote it down. If it's all right with you, I might make a little graphic of it and quote you and tag you. But it was something like, you're waiting until you know that it's happened. And when it's happened, you won't be there. You won't know. There will be nothing revealed. It's dreadful and yet hilarious. Because of course there is no revelation. This is the revelation.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, not bad, mate.
As non-dual shit goes, that's not bad.
It's good shit.
I tell you, one thing that I do find hilarious about myself is that how I like the words that come out of this mouth. It's really, I mean, how funny is that? And I don't have any shame in saying it. Oh, I can just hear my mother. My mother's just said to me, she just said, "Oh, Timothy, you always were very full of yourself."
I love it. Keep being shameless, Tim.
Shameless. Oh,
yeah.
I was thinking that of as a title for a book. It's quite a nice title.
I like that.
It's quite a nice title, isn't it? Shameless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Blameless, shameless. But shameless is is funny, because we are very, very heavily conditioned by all the adult selves as children to feel shame. Shame is shit, isn't it? Really awful. I mean, blame is bad, but shame is even worse, you know. At least you can keep the blame to yourself. You don't have to tell the other person. But shame, there's no hiding place from that. And it's quite brutal.
It comes up a lot in therapies and stuff.
Yeah, the majority of therapy is shame and blame. Mostly shame. Because of course, if you only blame, you just become a very antisocial, unpleasant bastard. But if your self mainly lives on shame, then you become depressed, almost inevitably. Of course you do. If you're a shit human being, and you're really ashamed of how shit a human being you are, then why the hell wouldn't you get depressed?
Mark has his hand up. If you're done, Rakesh.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Yeah. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Rakesh. Lovely to see you.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Mark.
So I'm just curious, what is your take on like Muji, Eckhart Tolle, those people? Do you feel like they're talking about the same thing, or is it different, or like yeah?
Well, it's been a while since I've read or listened to either of those two, but I did. Do I think it's the same? No, it's not. No. Most definitely not. But do I think there's anything wrong with it? No. But that's then there's nothing wrong with anything. But No, they're all about paths and journeys, you know, they're all about getting somewhere. And really, really all they are is quite elaborate self-improvement plans. The kind of self-help, really, you know. I did a lot of self-help. It may seem, I'm guessing you've all done a lot of self-help, whether you called it spiritual or psychological, but you've done a lot of self-help, and it may seem in the story like you have to do enough self-help till you realize that self-help doesn't help. You could say you've exhausted all the helping strategies, just hopping from one to the other. Oh, that worked for a while, because really, I mean, what most human beings do is they go from one works for a little while, but of course self is insatiable, because self is always looking for a resting place. Well, there's no rest for me. I am the unrest. So don't get me wrong, with Mooji and Eckhart and any other spiritual teacher, there's elements of what's been spoken about here, but I would really, the core reason, the main reason I'd say is not what I'm speaking about, is I don't have a sense that this is spiritual. I have no idea what spirit means. What on earth is that? That's as elusive as consciousness. Well, and of course, they will speak about awareness and consciousness a hell of a lot as well. And what glorious human fantasies they are. I don't know. Is that okay, Mark?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks.
John, go ahead, John.
Hello, John.
Hi, Tim. Hi. I think, how you doing? I think that if you, somebody quoted back your introduction from today, yes. I think you'd be impressed by what the guy said as well, just like you were when Rikesh read you back your own. That was really great, really, really spot on. There was one thing you said there was that how stories are empty, and yet the stories go on.
Yeah.
Because I always sort of imagined that the storytelling, the sort of the drive to tell stories was related to the self.
Yeah, it's not.
But it's not, because the fact is that the stories do go on, whether there's an awareness, whether the self has, been seen to be illusory or not. The stories go on.
Oh, absolutely.
But the thing is,
I don't think really what there is other than the stories, of course, it's just silence. So, that's without the stories, just silence. And of course, that's why silence is so, is a word that, well, I used it on my website and for my book, and because silence, you could say, is truth, but there's nothing in it. And this is the thing, that as a seeker, you can't help but hear the word silence and think there is something in the silence. No. Silence is in the silence. And there must be something in the emptiness, because I speak of emptiness quite a lot. So emptiness is something, and there's something in it. Oh, it's empty. There's nothing in it. And then you speak of nothing, and there's something in nothing. So the nothing, there's something in that, in the nothing. If I really get the nothing, there's something in that. No, there's nothing. When I say nothing, I do mean that. I don't mean nothing as something. But of course, as a word, even nothing is something, of course. And as a word, empty is full. It's full of emptiness. So that's something. The emptiness is something. No, it's so. And so, because self will never want to hear that there's nothing in it. For me, there's nothing to get. And it makes perfect sense why consciousness cells, awareness cells, the now cells, and they're all very attractive because they sound like something that could be enhanced, that could be, you could have more of it. Because but having said that, I mean, self will make nothing into something and think they can have more of nothing. No doubt. I don't doubt that for a moment. And of course, emptiness, you can make emptiness, and you can have more emptiness.
See, in a way, those are stories in the sense that, I mean, a story's always got some movement in it.
Yes. Normally
from lacking something to gaining something and maybe returning to some sort of equilibrium.
Yeah.
That seems to be sort of in the DNA of the story. But the strange thing is that the storytelling, and I mean, when you said that there's no end to the storytelling, there's also no end in the storytelling.
No.
In the way you're saying, I mean, it's, end in the sense of goal, his end is to, but also end in the sense of termination.
Yeah, I think I get your point though, John. Yeah, because I imagined in my years of going to see Tony and lots of other speakers, I imagined that it would be the end of the storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I heard you recently, when I asked you a question, I think described Tony as a romantic, and I wonder whether the way he describes his experience, it sort of does lead you to think that there is some despite everything he says, yes, you still can hear it as some sort of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still hear it as the end of the self, which is experienced by the self, which is obviously bollocks, but you can hear it like that.
Yeah.
And the patent fact that there's no ending to anything is, well, it's a comfort, of course, and it's it's the end of all seeking, but it's also the end of all fear.
Yeah, it's the end of most fear. Although because the story continues, if you want it to be a half decent story, you need a bit of fear in there, John.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, because when you say you need a bit of fear, yeah, I mean, because every story, in order to move, has to have something that's missing.
Yeah.
And the movement of the story depends on that missing thing being found.
Well, really, all it is change. And of course, a story just needs, for it to move, there needs to be change. Yeah. So something gained, something lost. Yeah. And of course, the appearance of that, that's why nearly every non-duality speaker uses the word apparently all the time, because of course there is the apparent gain and loss still.
Yeah.
That's how this appears.
Yeah.
Still looks like there's more or less of something. Yeah.
Mm.
because you haven't forgotten. I mean, it is dependent on memory, because you have to remember yesterday, or you have to remember 10 minutes ago. Otherwise, without memory, there wouldn't be any stories.
No.
But what really does die is almost completely, even in the storytelling, is the imagination of how it would be, how it will be. So memory seems to work not as well as it did, I will say, but then that could just be old age. But imagination is certainly, I would have called myself a very imaginative child and a quite imaginative young man. Hence, I had so much anxiety, because that's all imagination. I mean, if you don't want anxiety, you want to be rid of imagination. But, and I would say this, so it's like in the story only gets up to here. It doesn't continue. It doesn't continue. So the storytelling, I've only just thought this actually, but it's like the book is only to where you read to. Now there's a story.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Thanks.
Michael has his hand up. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Tim. I've heard quite a few descriptions or attempt to describe what life is like after this peculiar shift in perspective that range from almost a flatline nothingness to a sublime peace that passes understanding, subsumed in the joy and awe of simply being. There seems to be a spectrum of experiential description of this. What is your personal experience in your day-to-day interaction with life? Is it sublimely subsumed in peace? I watch you with your boys, and it's so beautiful. And we know so little about each other. But is it possible to describe what your relationship with life is in a way that we can understand?
Well, it's certainly both of those, the two possible extremes that you mentioned there. Yeah, both of those. But I don't think when I speak of this, I'm not speaking about life being a certain way. I could say that sometimes the emptiness is overwhelming. And I could say that sometimes love is overwhelming. And I can say that sometimes peace is overwhelming. So but it's not a certain way. And it's not possible to say, because I don't even consider those experiences. You know, I don't know what the emptiness or the peace or the love is, but they don't feel like experiences. And I may feel one, or there may be a feeling of emptiness, and there may be a feeling of peace, and there may be a feeling of love. But there is nothing constant. I don't have any sense of that there is one that remains. Maybe, apart from maybe the emptiness. But of course, but when it's really, the emptiness, life is sometimes full on what seems to be going on in there, and then it feels incredibly full.
Could you say it's depersonalized, or is it intimate?
See, I don't have any sense of that either, because the depersonalizing I don't get, because I don't think there's a sense of depersonalized when there's no person. So I just don't, because depersonalized only relates to me. And so without that, I don't have any, there's no sense of personal or impersonal. I don't, it's kind of like I will say, initially, it felt like if the emptiness was overwhelming. So you could say over time in my story, in memory, the emptiness was all-consuming for what seemed like, I don't even know, I don't remember the times, but for months and months. But I just think that was the absence of the one who filled it. So life was full of me, and then without me, fuck, it was empty. Shit. I just remember I said for weeks and weeks, every time my brother came to see me to see if I got out of bed that day, he would say to me, "How are you?" And I'd go, "I don't know." And he said, "Are you all right?" And I'd just go, "Oh, it's so fucking empty." And I was okay, but there was no despair, there was no fear. It was like everything had gone. But I think the everything that had gone was everything that was mine. But now I wouldn't say it's any way in particular. But the words, what do the words mean, Michael? What do we mean by peace and love? And it's really hard to say.
Is there a constant, any feeling of, oh, what am I trying to say? Sublime peace of simply being, does that feel like a constant in your life? No. Flowing along?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel like that, because, you know, all emotions appear, and, you know, I mean, I could say sublime annoyance, sublime anger, sublime, sublime, I don't know, you know, sublime disliking, you know, all the things that I wanted to get rid of in order to be a really great human being. You know, to be a wonderful, not spiritual, because it was never like that. It was just to be good, to be really good. So all the things I said were bad. So disliking, anger, and sadness. So there is much more sadness than ever before, Michael. And I will thank you, because you're the only other person I know who speaks about this and acknowledges the sadness. And I'm really grateful to you, because without you, it would feel like, oh, that's just me. That feels that, of course there's sadness. I would say maybe that's the constant. Which, you know, who the fuck wants that? And I don't talk about it as much as I should, probably. But I know, as a seeker, I don't want to listen to any arsehole who talks about sadness being the constant. But of course, everything is always being lost. And there is absolutely no escape from that. So what was is already not. I mean, you can't get sadder than that. There's nothing to, there's nothing to hold on to.
Is there a generalized compassion for life or sentience?
Yeah, much more compassion. And I will say, not just for sentient life, but for everything. Yeah. I mean, there can be love of a rock, can't there? And I mean, I have always loved rocks. I was always a beachcomber collecting. The seaside holidays, I just have buckets full of stones. Treasure, beautiful, beautiful treasure. So that, yeah, compassion for rocks and trees and clouds. And
does the compassion splash back into yourself? This compassion you feel for others, do you feel that for yourself, for Tim?
No, I would say I don't really, but I do no, I don't have that. It's more like for Tim, the suffering Tim. There's great compassion for the memory. That's what I would say. No, because I can't see myself. Because I can't see myself at all, Michael. There's no compassion for me. No, none. I can't see myself. Can you?
Of course not. I think there's general.
So it's only for that I can objectify, as you might put it. There can only be compassion for that you can see. Don't get me wrong. There is compassion for the human being, so I can look in the mirror. It is quite funny looking in the mirror these days and seeing my dad smiling back at me. I'm really spitting image, just as I remember my father, but not as I remember myself. I don't recognize the guy in the mirror at all. And I think this is a common experience for virtually everyone. But yeah, there can be compassion for the human being, but that's not for me though.
And yet you're part of the picture of being human. You are included in that.
Yeah. But I just think the compassion is just, you could say it's just for being human. Yeah, that's the compassion, for being human. Yeah.
Lovely.
And one thing that isn't spoken about much in non-duality meetings is that is what we're speaking about. If this is a revelation of anything, it's a revelation of humanness. Of that's what's starkly obvious.
That's beautiful, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And I do mean that. I do mean that about thanking you about the sadness, because I just thought, well, none of the speakers speak about sadness at all. And I've never, until I heard you speak, I'd never heard anyone mention it. And I thought, well, obviously I can't be there yet. Obviously I've not arrived. There's all this fucking sadness going on. What's this?
I see everyone's great big broken heart. Life breaks hearts. It's what it does. And this compassion, this upwelling compassion that I believe includes ourselves, includes and embraces every humans in particular, the suffering, physical, mental, emotional, the pain of being human. I see heroes everywhere. I fall in love everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I suppose that's all self-centered. I don't know. I don't care anymore.
No, I can tell. I can tell you don't care anymore, Michael. That's a beautiful thing in itself.
I love you, Tim. I think you're just incredible.
Oh, thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
How are you doing for time, Tim? It's 10 past. Anita has a hand up, and Mark's asking something.
I think I'm enjoying myself too much, Darren.
All right, well, I'll just go quickly with Mark. Hang on, Anita. Mark was just saying that, you know, earlier when you said if you want to get rid of anxiety, then you'd need to get rid of imagination. Mark says, so you could say that all depression and anxiety is just imagination? Question?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
That's taking it a step too far. No, I wouldn't say that. No, because a lot of depression is traumatic memory. It's trauma.
Anita has a hand up. Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, hi, Darren and Tim and all
Hi.
others. Yeah. I'm doubting how to say this. I really don't know how to say this. Nothing is right or wrong, of course.
Oh, just say it how you happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there is a man, and he is saying that it has to do with the brain. Enlightenment has to do with the brain, and then I'm really thinking there is no such thing as enlightenment, and when there is, it has really nothing to do with the brain. How can nothing be related to something? So but he is saying that over and over again, it has to do with the brain. So that's a little bit irritating for this, but yeah, I can hear it, but
yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, Anita.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine.
Yeah, and I want to say about the sadness, there are more people that's feeling the sadness, and some are also talking about the sadness.
Oh yeah, I think just generally the people I listen to, it wasn't really talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe there are more speakers speaking about it. I will say I'm not really up to date because I don't listen anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really speaking from, you know, my years of listening.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know, maybe quite a lot of the young speakers, maybe they speak about it with it.
Andreas is also speaking about the sadness.
Is he? Well,
yeah, of course. Yes, he had also a very sad
period. When I spoke to him.
Yeah.
He was far too jolly for me. I'm joking.
Yeah.
But he, oh, maybe he does now.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard
Yeah.
of
But yeah, it also doesn't matter, of course, but there is
not at all. No.
I also enjoying your talks very much.
Thank you, Anita.
Grateful for your talks. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying anyone's wrong, not mentioning the sadness, but it just can be. I don't know. One of the things that I suffered from as a self was making sadness wrong. And when sadness is very obviously love, sadness is liberated.
Thank you. And thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Nita. Well, thanks, everyone. Yeah, there are a lot of female speakers. So next week, I'm flying to America. He said, talking about there being no future, which I'm excited about, whatever is he speaking about. And yeah, so I'm speaking on the 21st, 22nd and 23rd it's actually in a really small town outside Asheville in North Carolina called Weaverville. But if you're passing by, then drop in. And then I booked the Philadelphia Association in Hampstead, London for the I've forgotten now. It's on my website. I think it's 21st of November. So there's Saturday in November, Saturday in December, and a Saturday in January booked for Hampstead in London. So it would be great if any of you would like to come to a live meeting. And yeah, thanks ever so much for coming. Thanks for those who shared today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you,
Darren.
Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So beautiful today, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.
Bye.
Thanks, Darren, too.
You're welcome.